What's up, Fantraxians? I'm super excited to be welcoming a brand new guest to the show today, marking the last episode of Into Final Space Volume 1 and setting us up for our next season. First, I want to express my apology on behalf of both myself and Shelby Mary, who was not able to join us on Into Final Space for Season 2 in review. We continue to pray for her continued recovery and hope to welcome her back for Volume 2 of the podcast. Anyway, without further ado, pumped to introduce this guy. You see him every episode during the title sequence, and you've seen him in Final Thoughts. Let's welcome to the show Final Space executive producer David Sachs. All right, David, welcome to the show. I am so glad to have you on via Skype. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So glad to be.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. So I think we're breaking up a little bit. There we go. Yeah, sorry about that. Love Skype. But yeah, thank you for joining me. I've had you on hold for a bit now. So glad we could finally get you on the show to chat a little bit about Season 1, primarily about that incredible second season. So we're going to start with a traditional interview like the fans have seen in the past episodes, and then move into a bit more of a discussion based on the questionnaires that we had the fans answer.
Yeah, sure. That sounds good.
Awesome. So can you just start by telling us a little bit about what all you do on Final Space? I know it's a lot, but it's, what you mainly do on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. So what I mainly do on the day-to-day basis, let's see, is the show that you see on television. So that means just writing the scripts and just making sure that the shots and the moments are laying out right, and that just that the episodes are delivering on a comedic and a dramatic fashion. And so it's really me and Olan just every step of the way, and it's it's been a tremendous privilege. We have an amazing team just all around, but kind of like when push comes to shove and you've got to figure out, okay, well, what's that shot going to look like? I'm right there, right there at the front lines.
Awesome. Yeah. And how'd you come to discover Olan Rogers and his work?
Well, I'll tell you, I got just this great email from an old friend of mine, David Kissinger, who's the head of development over at Conoco, Conan O'Brien's TV production company. And he sent me a link to the original Final Space YouTube clip and said, what do you think? And I think I wrote back, wow, just wow. I was blown away by it. And he was like, well, do you think you'd like to meet Olan and discuss turning it into a TV series? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so it was sort of intimidating. I walked in and there was like a table full of like 8 different executives and Olan. And I guess I was one of a number of people they were meeting with. And yeah, that conversation just went really well, and we were off and running. And it was just to sort of like from that moment on, me and Olan were just like really just trying to figure out like let's make a TV show, and it's been just this amazing ride ever since.
Yeah. So what was it about that first pilot experience that really made you believe that Final Space could be a really successful television show?
Well, I'll say the word that everyone during all those initial meetings and when we were trying to pitch the show and sell it kept on saying. It was like the golden word, and that was tone. There was a tone that got sold in that original YouTube piece that was different and special and almost magic. There was a seriousness to it, almost like a reality to it. Like we were tapping into something that was super real, even as it was taking place in a animated format in outer space, like things that seemed to be the most unreal. And yet it just felt like, wow, we're tapping into the DNA of real. And then the whole kind of, to this day, all the writing and everything like that is just trying to stay true to that.
Yeah, I think that's what draws in a lot of the fans is It's the writing of the show is just such a complex message of it's not just the kind of what unfortunately adult animation has come out to be is kind of the raunchy adult comedy, but it's got that realness to it and it's got that heart and the characters are relatable. So yeah, I think that's really what's drawn a lot of fans to the show.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's been from my standpoint. I've written for shows like The Simpsons and Regular Show and a show called Pig, Goat, Banana, Cricket, which was this sort of this wild, like surreal kind of like meta Looney Tunes exercise in madness. What what this show has allowed me to do as a writer that none of those other shows have done, and really none of the other shows I've worked on has done, is really kind of bring real life as I understand it, to the production.
yeah,
And so you can engage in silliness because that's also part of real life,
sure.
comedy and relationships, but also those kind of maybe those kind of deeper meditations, and also just the idea that a lot of life, and this might sound a little bit more dark than I mean it to, but just go with me for a moment. A
Yeah,
lot of life is just kind of surviving life,
sure.
and and so this show sort of kind of deals with that as well.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Um, so what was the process of going about and pitching the show and then finally getting the green light to go ahead and make that first season? The feelings that you were feeling, kind of the stress of trying to figure out what this first season is going to look like, how we're going to change the style a little bit, writing for that first season.
Yeah, so I think it was the very first session that Olin and I just kind of like sat in a room. There was a big whiteboard, like a blackboard, and we made a list. We said, okay, what we want to do is defy expectations. Like, people are going to look at this show and they're going to expect certain things. And we made a list. We made it like an actual list. I wish I had taken a picture of it with my phone, but I didn't. We made an actual list of all the things that people expect to see in a show like this. And we came up with not just the opposite of every single one of those things on the list, but sort of like our opposite. Like, in other words, we weren't just sort of being contrary to be contrary.
Right.
We came up with sort of like, well, yeah, but what can we do? Like, what are the possibilities outside of this particular category? And then, yeah, and then we came up with that list, and we stayed true to it. To this day, we've stayed true to that. So yeah, so a lot of making this into a show was to kind of to continue to surprise people. That was very important to us.
Yeah, yeah, and then it's definitely surprising. It was pretty much unlike anything me personally I'd seen on animation on television, and it continues to be astounding what goes into this show. So is there anything that you personally changed about that first season, and if so, did that kind of transition into what you tried to fix in the second season at all?
That first season, boy, we put just really blood, sweat, and tears. Well, into everything, by the way, but
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
that, what kind of was a little bit different about that first season was that I think that we turned out to be a bit of a surprise to the network, and as a result, they kind of didn't really have any expectations. They were just sort of like, well, let's give this a try. We'll just see what comes from it. Let's see what they come up with. And so as a result, we were really able to sort of like chase our vision fairly relentlessly the entire first season. And so I honestly don't know if there's anything that I would change about that first season, as strange as that sounds,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a line here or there or something like that, but all in all, like that was kind of really what we were trying to accomplish. And I'll tell you something, when we did that 10th episode and that season finale for the first season was up there, and it's just Gary alone dying in space. I mean, I can't even tell you how many tears I fought back and occasionally cry, just, because you have to watch these cuts over and over again, sometimes dozens of times over the course of production. And there was just something so true and so real about that I was just like blown away.
Yeah, definitely. So what's it like to work with such an incredible group of actors and artists on the show that you guys kind of give them? I know you have directions that you want to see, but at the same time, talking to a lot of them, they all feel like they have some sort of artistic expression, artistic freedom behind what they do. And how do you balance that? Keeping them in line to what you want to see at the end of the product and letting them have that balance.
Well, that's a great question, and I sort of like live by this motto, and any show that I'm on that I'm executive producing, I try to make this to be the hallmark, which is the best idea wins. That's kind of what I call it, and so in that way, it's kind of democratic, where because just because you've been doing it for maybe a little bit longer than someone else doesn't mean that you're going to have the best idea. Someone who's like new to the process might have the best idea. And it's sort of like kind of getting your ego out of the way and making what's most important to you. Like I'll just speak personally, what's most important to me is the best quality show. That's what's most important to me. And hopefully I've got a lot of ideas in it, and I'm really contributing to that. But even if I'm not, at least I am sort of curating in a way where I'm like saying, okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. That's got to be in it. That's got to be in it. You know what I mean? And making sure just the best material is always up there. But at the same time, maintaining what your vision of the show is.
Sure.
So you never want to get it to a place where sort of like you hear an idea, which might be a great idea, but it may be a great idea for another show or another episode or another season. So that's really the balancing act, making sure that you're open to hearing like everyone's contributions, but at the same time not getting derailed from what the thing you're doing is.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's a kind of it's an imperfect process, but if your heart's in the right place, you'll get it right more often than not.
Yeah. Awesome. And of course, I have to ask, who's your favorite character, if you had to pick one?
That's a really hard one. That's a really hard one. I mean, I love Hugh. I love Kevin. I love Tribor. They all have like incredibly different, lovable things about themselves.
Yeah.
I even really like Ava. I know Ava did not get a lot of screen time, but she kind of was like a really good version of what she was, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
She kind of just had to do like, she had to be pretty straight. Every once in a while she was a little snarky, but whatever she had to do, she kind of did that thing. And I really appreciated that,
Right, yeah. And I think that goes along with such a diverse and really well written cast of characters. Is everybody has their own trait, everybody has their own ways they connect with the other characters, and that's what's really fun about Final Space.
Yeah, and of course at the core of everything is Gary, and I think that if Gary weren't Gary, then the show wouldn't be the show.
Yeah,
and I just have to always have to give tribute to Olan's voice acting, which I think is really fantastic, and the range of emotions and the truth in the acting that comes out, because one of the things I've done a lot of live action shows, Third Rock from the Sun, Malcolm in the Middle, just shows like that, and what this animation has been able to do, and I don't even know that every animation could do this, but Final Space in particular has been able to go from a funny moment to a very serious moment, and effortlessly, and somehow the funny moment still remains funny, and the serious moment can make you cry.
Yeah,
and a lot of that sort of elasticity, if you will, really comes from Olan's voice acting.
Yeah.
And that's opened up a lot of avenues for the show, which really make it so satisfying to write for. Because you can really go in any direction in any moment.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So that's just a little bit of some of my personal interview questions. We're going to go into a little bit about what the fans had to say about this second season. So as we go through the questionnaire, I'll make some of their comments and give some of the feedbacks from the fans. And if you have anything that you want to say regarding their thoughts, please do.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to chat about was the fans' favorite episodes. Runners-up included anything from the obvious Chapter 9 and Chapter 4 from this season, which are both huge fan favorites. But your survey specifically included that the fans really loved the finale. So do you have any thoughts or special memories from writing that one, or what you want to do really to wrap up this second season?
Yeah, so we always knew that second season was going to be Gary rescuing Quinn. And when you watch the season from the standpoint that Gary is going to rescue Quinn, I think that you realize that the second season, and this is just kind of me talking, and I know my experience is different from fans' experience watching it week to week. I'm really super curious, by the way, just as an aside, for all of the Reddit comments to come in from the international audience who's going to binge season 2.
Yeah.
So I think that when people binge season 2, they're going to see a different show than what fans watched in America when it rolled out week to week. I think that one of the sort of the challenging aspects of season 2 as it rolled out week to week is because we kind of switched a little bit storytelling methods from season 1.
Yeah.
And I think people weren't sure exactly how to watch the show. Like they were really expecting that ultra sequentialized viewing experience.
Yes, absolutely.
And when they didn't get that and they had to wait a week and then another week, I think a lot of people were legitimately, understandably confused, you know? But like I say, getting back to, the season finale, we were always writing toward that season finale. And when you watch the show maybe more in a binge mode, season 2, I think you'll see that absolutely everything was driving to every single episode. Everything was driving toward that finish, and it just felt really good. It was challenging to write because I think that given the way the season 1 finale turned out, it was sort of like a very intimidating standard to try to match.
Yeah.
I know these things are all personal and very subjective, so I don't know if we did match it for people. I know we did for some people, but we were just really trying to give that sense of everything being wrapped up, but this time with a happy ending.
Yeah, and I personally loved it. I think.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. 46.4% of the responses from the survey said that was their favorite. So
isn't that interesting? I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a great way to wrap the season. It from a writing standpoint, it's definitely finally just meeting that resolution. I think that's what every season should, and then just leaving off on that cliffhanger of setting up for what's coming next. So also on the questionnaire, I asked, what's your favorite season? Just out of curiosity, 67.9% came back. That was season 2. 32.1% is season 1. So yeah, I think both have their highs and their lows. I think both were exceptional. I think
that's great to hear that I'm sorry, you want to finish your thought?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm so glad to hear that, that there's a, that strong feeling about season 2. Like I say, I think that, it took a little while to adjust to, because we weren't following just one single ace story like season 1, and it took a little bit of a little time for people to get the hang of that. But what it did allow us to do was to really go into way more character depth than we were able to do in season one.
Yeah.
And also to experiment a little bit more. I know a big fan favorite was episode 4, season 2, The Other Side.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like a real standalone episode. And I don't know that we would have been able to do an episode like that season 1. So that was kind of cool.
And, this is jumping around a little bit, but there were surprisingly mixed reviews on that episode. I loved it. It was very well written, very well artistically done. Devo and the team did an exceptional job with the time shard thing.
I know. Ben Bidjilajak, sorry. That's a
yeah,
thing.
Yeah.
He's awesome too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I know there's some fans that were a little upset that it was a standalone episode that was kind of never really referenced again throughout season 2.
Right. And I think that is definitely a regret that both Olan and I have, that we could have integrated that a little bit more into season 2 in terms of little Kato's life experience and everything like that. So I think that's a bit of a regret that we didn't do that, but I don't think that diminishes episode 4 in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. So now we're going to talk about some of the favorites of what people love this season. So yeah, like you said, definitely the character development was a big plus in this season. We got a lot of really good relationship bonding. Someone said pacing was better, as was the animation and the music and the writing. The animation was much smoother. Very character-centric episodes. There's a lot of really great world building. Production quality was way up. Yeah, everything was this person said everything, of course, but specifically the raised stakes and intensity, which I thought was stellar this season. But yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. Also, I think that that said he felt the raised stakes because one of the sort of the disadvantages of season 2 was that we didn't have that the constant menace of the Lord Commander.
Sure.
Which sort of like kind of because David Tennant just gives these remarkable voice performances. I mean, one of the highlights has just been, and we've never been in the same room with him. He's always kind of done it remotely from England. And so I really hope that we get a chance to be in the same room with him at some point. But anyway, he gives these like performances that you literally want to leap from the couch and start applauding. It's like
yeah.
It's evil and wonderful and inventive. They're incredible. But anyway, one of the challenges was definitely keeping the stakes alive, and it was a little harder to do season 2 without that sort of your go-to villain, which is constantly on your heels.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, definitely, I agree with that. It really stayed intense. There wasn't really any part of the season where you're just like, it's kind of a boring episode because they're not really doing anything. This one, there was always still some sort of goal to go after.
We started to feel a little bit bad because by the time we were rolling out the episodes, they were done already. So people were reacting to them, and there was some point, especially around episodes 8 and 9. 7, 8, and 9. 7, which is one that I think was definitely on the crew one of the very favorites. That's the one where Quinn makes her own Gary.
Yeah. And
then it's sort of like never meant to be together, but always meant to be.
Absolutely.
Or that was such a sad one. And then 8, we get Avocado back, and then we lose him. And then 9, little Kato has to shoot his father to
Yeah.
stop killing Gary. It was like people were just like, what are you doing to us? You know, they were just writing like, you know, leave us alone. You know, it's too intense. And so we had to, you know, we had to kind of deal with that aspect as well. But I'm glad that people stuck with it.
Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to talk about from some people's favorites was definitely one of the favorites this season that I really just I haven't personally talked about a lot on the show. Nightfall, her story arc this season, and then her final sacrifice to save Gary
Yeah.
was really really well done.
Yeah. I mean, we just it's really a love story, and it's really like a tragic love story. I mean, the idea that you can on hundreds of timelines trying to save the person you love, and you've never been able to be successful. It always fails. And remember, all those Garys, it's always Gary who ends up closing the breach, and he's all those dead Garys because Nightfall has never been successful. And then finally, in the timeline that we watched, you know, episode 1, season 1, the one that we've been airing, you watch this timeline, and she's finally successful, and Gary doesn't reciprocate her love.
Right.
I mean, what could be more like heartbreaking?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, she was very well done this season. But yeah, that was some of the favorites from this season. Now I did ask if you don't mind just chatting about this a
Sure.
little bit. There's just some things that fans didn't maybe like as much, and
Yeah.
what they'd want to see maybe improved in the future.
Yeah.
And you actually mentioned one of them already is and I think like binging would solve that. The continuation of the chapters was the very first one that came up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like I say, I think that if you were to rewatch the season, you will see a level of continuity that you didn't know was there before. Like a lot of people were sort of like, just to give you an example, they were like, you know, Todd Watson, you know, Hushfluffles, which
Yeah.
to me was like one of the great character designs of the entire show. Just this maniacal, crazy looking, you know, puppet head, you know, with that red, that fire engine red, which was just sort of like crazy. You know, he appears in episode 2 and then he's gone, and people are like, what the hell? You know what I mean? Like, what
Yeah.
happened to that guy? But the truth is that he was always going to be part of the season, and he was always going to continue to be an enemy of Gary's. And if you know watching it, he's going to reappear 100% and really be like a legitimate villain, then I think that you aren't as thrown by the fact that he kind of disappears for a few episodes.
Yeah.
You know, like there's this thing that I've sort of noticed in life, maybe you can relate to this, which is when you're driving to a place you've never been before, right? It takes longer than when you're driving home from that place.
Yeah.
There's no traffic either way, you know, because, and it's just an illusion, but you're just kind of driving and you're always kind of looking over your shoulder. Did I miss the turnoff? Did I miss the turnoff? When's this exit coming up? When's this, you know what I mean? And then when you're driving home, you're just driving home, and it just seems to be much faster. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about in terms of a second viewing. When you know that these questions in your mind, you already have answers to them, then you're just sort of along for the ride and stuff like that. Yeah. So I totally I'm totally sympathetic to the people who wanted more of a sequentialized thing. I think moving forward, if we have the chance, we'll try to do a better job at that.
Yeah. And then another thing that kind of popped up often was a lot of fans were not a huge fan of the subplots that popped up a lot throughout the episodes. You know, kind of coming off the main goal of grabbing all the keys.
Yeah, so those are these sort of, we wanted to introduce sort of like more of comedic B plots and things like that.
Yeah.
And that was actually something that was really sort of a directive from the network to kind of expand the palette of the show.
Sure.
And kind of, in a way, make it sort of kind of more of a mainstream adult animation. So
Yeah.
we totally understood where they were coming from, and we just all I can say is we tried our best with those things. I think if we were to do something a little bit different moving forward, I think that we probably still would maybe try to have a little bit of that, but that maybe there would be more of an overarching storylines to those side plots.
Yeah.
Almost like if you remember in the first season, the first bunch of episodes, you're cutting to little Kato, and he had his own little B story side adventure. But then you saw it sort of like integrate into the larger plot, and you were like,
Right.
well, that's super cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that maybe that little Kato model from season 1 would be a good sort of like compromise, where you could still sort of like change the flavor a little bit if you wanted to, but at the same time, it wouldn't feel like, oh, you could have just cut that and we would have been right where we needed to be, but adding more consequence to it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for answering those. We're gonna take a short break and then come back and answer some of the fan questionnaire questions. All right, we'll be back in just a second for a very special Fan Trexians Respond. All right, so we got questions for you from both our questionnaire and from Discord and Reddit. Let's see if you can just answer a few of them for us. There was a lot submitted, so we're going to try to get as many as we can. I know a lot of fans have this question, and it may have been answered before, but is Final Space a script-based or a storyboard-driven show?
Right, so it's script-based, and so a storyboard-driven show, just if you know this, then you'll be able to always figure it out on your own. Like SpongeBob would be like the ultimate story-driven show, where basically the writers submit a loose outline for an episode, and then the storyboarder could go like it's sort of like, let's say SpongeBob blows a lot of bubbles. So that might not look like much on a script page, but in the hands of a skilled storyboarder, just think of all the expressions SpongeBob can make blowing bubbles and all the crazy things. Like so then the storyboarder gets to go to town and just come up with like wild, hilarious things. So that would be a classic storyboard driven show. But ours is very much, we've got a real story to tell and a lot of plot and a lot of written jokes. And so a lot of dialogue jokes is what I mean.
Yeah.
And so ours is script driven.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. Our next question comes from Kelly asking, what is your favorite thing about working on Final Space?
Yeah, so I would say that that really kind of like what I was saying before, that I can bring all parts of myself to the series, meaning to say I can write, silly dumb jokes or wild like mythological sort of like world building type ideas to trying to impart every once in a while some wisdom. Like I think one of my proudest moments on the show is writing that line. I'll try to quote it exactly. All of us are broken. The only question is how much and how far are we willing to go to fix it? Mm-hmm. I feel like I literally put everything I know about life into that line. So again, not a lot of shows that I could do that on.
Now it's a poster. So Tally asks, what have you and Olan disagreed on regarding the story? If you have any moments of, y'all just didn't meet eye to eye on a specific part of the story?
Yeah, that's just the creative process. I'd say, 99% of the time we're in sync, which is, just been wonderful. Yeah, you're always going to come up with an idea that's, as we say, a bridge too far. It's like, all right, no, let's not do that. But then we're right back in. You know what I mean? It's never a question of hurt feelings or anything like that. It's just, you're just trying to make the best show.
Sure, yeah. Let's see, Tony asks, was Bolo meant to be a good character from the start, or were there ever doubts about him and his role possibly being a bad guy?
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's, let's just say that's an unfolding story.
Okay. Okay.
I think I think that we love Bolo, and we love Keith David has given us
Absolutely.
maybe
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the best aspects of the entire series. That voice is just awesome, and that character design is just
Yes.
off the charts. It's off the charts, in my opinion. Um, so I think that we always like the thing about what I've been told, and I think they teach us in writing classes too, so this might sound familiar, but if you're writing something really good, even if it's a novel or anything, screenplay, television show, whatever it is, at a certain point, the characters should start talking to you, and the characters should start telling you what they want.
All right.
And then that's an exciting moment for a writer, where it's sort of like your creation comes to life, and it's sort of like making demands. So I can tell you that when we first conceived Bolo, that he definitely good. But Bolo's a deep guy, and it's like I'm still waiting for him to tell us his story.
Yeah. And I know, I don't remember who exactly I was talking to, but the when we go through season 2 and we find out from Cheryl there's the possibility that he's bad, um, you guys had come across that way early back in the first season of there's possibility that Bolo might be bad from fans. They generated that theory.
Yeah,
Which is-
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And then it's funny because he really is at the end of the season. He was a man of his word, and he did what he
yeah,
was going to say, and he's all good. So it was interesting because I know I personally was surprised when at the end of the first episode, season 2, when Bolo reappears and gives him the mission. I was shocked that how many people were like, he's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. Don't trust
yeah,
him. Don't trust him. Don't trust him. And that just sort of surprised me. And then when Oreskes comes up and Oreskes goes, I imprisoned him for a reason. It's because he's really evil. Everyone was like, we told you so. We told you so. And I was like, just wait, just wait, just wait.
yeah. And then we're do this as our last question because it's kind of probably a larger one and a bit open ended. But you specifically, what's your writing process? How do you go about just starting on a new episode?
Yeah, so Olin and I will break the episode. We'll begin by talking about the season arc. So first, we kind of want to figure out, where are we going to? We knew at the end of season 1, it's Gary floating basically dead in space. We knew that from before we sold the show, that's what we were writing toward. Which is why we were able to have that countdown 10, 9, 8 from the very beginning of the show, because we knew we were going there.
Right.
We knew from the very beginning of season 2 it's going to be Gary rescuing Quinn. We knew that also. So we lay out the arc of the season and the highlights and things like that. And then when it comes to actually writing, I'll write half, and Olin will write the other half of the script. Lately, the way it's been is I'll write the first half of the script, Olin will write the second half of the script, and Olin will give me his half, and I'll give him my half, and then we'll rewrite each other, and then we'll sit down and while we're both in the same room, we'll do a pass together. And that's kind of what the process has been. And then we'll also send out that draft to some punch-up people, and we'll get some extra jokes and things like that. See if we can, make anything funnier or sharper or better. And that's generally speaking how we do it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, David. It was really great having you on the show. Sorry we couldn't get more questions answered from the fans, but we're so grateful to have you working on this awesome show, and thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me. And I just want to make a giant shout out to all the fans for just sticking with the show and kind of believing in it. And letting it be part of their lives, because I really feel like we're kind of going through this journey together. And it's so important to me to know that people are so kind of emotionally involved in the show, because we're kind of putting our whole heart into it, and just to see that it's resonating with you guys just means everything.
Wow, what an incredible wrap to season 2. Thank you to David for joining me and Olan Rogers for connecting us. You can also tweet David at DavidSachs9 on Twitter once you've listened to this episode, and tell him your thoughts, and tweet him anytime. He's always really wants to hear from fans. I apologize, of course, for our Skype interruptions. Unfortunately, recording across the United States comes at a difficulty. But now we're going to move into Volume 2 of Into Final Space. I'm really excited to bring you guys some awesome new guests. Very soon, I'll be releasing an announcement video with some of the special events and the guests that are coming to the podcast to hold you over through this hiatus. Until then, follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Into Final Space, and I'll see you next time on Into Final Space. Thanks, guys.